Dear students, in this video I am going to discuss about the concept of security in operating systems. The contents of this video is what is a security problem, various security violation categories, and various security violation methods. A system is secure if resources used and accessed as intended under all circumstances. We can say that a resource is said to be secure if all the resources are used and accessed as intended under all circumstances. That means whatever permissions are specified and whatever privileges are given to the resources, they are used accordingly. So then we can say that the system is secure. Generally, in most of the times, this kind of security is unachievable because there may be some intruders, some threats or attacks in the system. So therefore, we need to take necessary measures in order to make our system secure. Let us see what are all the security threats and problems that are in the operating system. An intruder or cracker, he attempt to breach the security. Breach means breaking the security or opening the security of some resource. The resource may be a system itself, or it may be a file, or it may be some memory which is connected to the computer system. Threat is a potential security violation. Violating the security is threat. Attack is attempt to breach the security. The attack may be sometimes accidental or malicious. It is easier to protect our system against the accidental attacks rather than malicious attacks. So accidental attack is non-intentional, whereas malicious attack is intentional. So intentional attacks are very difficult to handle. There are various security violation categories are there. Breach of confidentiality. It is something like unauthorized reading of data, unauthorized accessing of data. All these are breaching of confidentiality. Breach of integrity. Unauthorized modification of data. For example, I have a file. That file has only read permission, but a process is trying to modify the content of the file. Then it is called unauthorized modification of the data. Breach of unavailability. So this is something related to unauthorized destruction of data. So for example, there is a confidential data is there, making that confidential data or important data unavailable to the user. Even the user is a legitimate user, he could not get access to that particular data because the data is made unavailable. Theft of service. Unauthorized use of resources is called as theft of service. Denial of service. Preventing the authorized user in accessing the resource. That is prevention of legitimate use of resources. This is called denial of service. Security violation methods. Masquerading is one of the security violation methods. Replay attack, man-in-the-middle attack, session hijacking, all are the security violation methods. So what is masquerading? Pretending to be an unauthorized user to escalate privileges. Masquerading means pretending to be an authorized user to escalate the privileges. Let us see what is the mean by masquerading. Here sender and receiver is communicating and they are having some conversation and by exchanging some messages. The attacker, he will be watching this conversation between the sender and receiver. In masquerading, after some time, the attacker, after getting some confidential information about this communication between the sender and receiver, the attacker will communicate with the receiver as if the sender is communicating to receiver. And again, the attacker will communicate with the sender as if the receiver is communicating. But generally, actually, the sender and receiver are not having the direct communication. It is made via through this attacker. The attacker is replying to the sender as if the receiver is replying to his message. Similarly, attacker is giving reply to the receiver as if the sender is giving reply to the receiver's message. In that way, the attacker will totally get the attention of both the sender and receiver, and then attacker will communicate with the sender and receiver as if they are communicating originally. This is called as masquerading, pretending to be an authorized user to escalate the privileges. That is the masquerading. Next one is replay attack. Replay attack is, for example, Alice is a bank customer. She is logging to the bank server by using her login credentials. The attacker Bob, he will be listening and watching to this Alice credentials used in the network for accessing to the bank server. Once the Alice logs off, then the Bob will make use of the credentials used by the Alice after the Alice goes offline to access the bank server. This is called as replay attack. So replay attack is a type of network attack in which the attacker captures a valid network transmission and then retransmit it later. That means he will capture the valid network transmissions like login credentials, and then he will use those login credentials to retransmit to the bank server and try to get access to the Alice bank server, bank account. This is about replay attack. Man in the middle attack. So here in this, intruder sits in the data flow. He will masquerade as sender or receiver and vice versa. So man in the middle is also like this only. The attacker will be sitting in the conversation between the sender and receiver, and he will gain the information from that conversation, and then by using that information he will try to send information to the receiver and send as sender, and send information to the sender as receiver. Like that, this is man in the middle attack. Total session will be under the control of the attacker. This is about man in the middle attack. Session hijacking. So generally a session is established between two parties in order to perform some transaction or in order to perform some conversation. So this attacker, he will totally hijack that session and pass the information to these parties as if they are only performing the conversation originally by bypassing the total authentication of the entire session which is established. So this is called as session hijacking. So various levels of security measures need to be taken into account. So in order to make our system secure, so at physical level, human level, operating system level and network level, we need to enforce security. So at physical level, so example data centers, server, connected terminals, so they are all physical resources. So we need to take care of the security of these physical resources from the attackers. Human. Avoid social engineering, phishing, dumpster diving. This kind of human attacks need to be taken care in order to make our system secure. So what is meant by this social engineering? Social engineering is nothing but it is an art of manipulating people so they give up confidential information. So it is like sometimes we get phone call from as if they are from company. So they try to ask our personal information and try to extract that by manipulating the people in a more attractive speech. This is called social engineering. Phishing attack. Phishing attack is nothing but it is also a form of social engineering only. So phishing attack generally uses emails or malicious websites to solicit personal information by posting as a trustworthy organization. Example, the attacker may send an email message to the users as if it is from a reputable credit card company or financial institution that requests account information, and they also mention that if they don't respond to this email, the account will be closed or suspended, like that. By seeing that kind of emails, the user feels that he will respond to that information, and he will fill the form and send the requested information. Then the attackers will gain access to those accounts by using the information. So therefore we should be very careful in when we get such kind of emails, messages to our phones asking for some personal information or account information related to our bank accounts. Next one is a phishing attack. Phishing attack, where an urgent official sounding voicemail convinces the victims to act quickly. Otherwise, they say that they will suffer with the severe consequences on trust to gain. So they gain some trust and then get all the confidential information from the user, and then they make all necessary damages to the user. Dumpster diving. It is also a person investigating a person or business trash to find information that can be used as an attack in the computer network. So dumpster divers locate financial statements, government records, medical bills, resumes, and the similar documents by exploring the victim rubbish. So generally what happens in dumpster diving, user deletes some of the messages which are in his email account. These deleted messages will be in the trash, or if it is a computer, it will be there in the recycle bin. So this dumpster diving, this attacker will look into the trash of the emails or else in the recycle bin, and he will try to look into the deleted messages and available information in the recycle bin in order to get information about the customer, related credit card receipts, whatever expenses he has done, expenses reports, and phone numbers, any printed emails are there, then he will look into that. Then he will find out the passwords and access codes. Then any organizational charts, calendars are there. All these information he may try to extract from that trash or bin. Then by using the valid information, then the attacker will try to attack the person's account. Program threats, the threats that may happen through programs. So one of the most popular program threat is Trojan horse, trapdoor, logic bomb, like that. There are various program threats are there. A Trojan horse is nothing but it is a type of malware that is often distinguished as a legitimate software. That means A Trojan horse is a type of malware that is often discussed as legitimate software. What is meant by legitimate software? It is like licensed software or trustworthy software, valid software, so like that. So this code segment that misuses the environment, and it will try to exploit the mechanisms for allowing the programs written by the users to be executed by other users. So like that, so the Trojan horse will try to make programs written by one user to be executed by other users. Some of the examples of this Trojan horse is spyware, pop-up browser windows, covert channels, etc. Sometimes we get pop-ups when we are browsing the windows. So sometimes this pop-up browsers, if we accept if we give the grant permissions to those pop-up windows, then there is a possibility of this Trojan horse to execute unwanted programs in our system, and that make misuse of our computer system. Covert channels is also like some channels which are under the control of some attackers. They behave like as if they are the genuine channels. So once we try to access that channels, then these programs will be transmitted to our system, and they may damage the contents of our system. So therefore, we should be very careful with this spyware and pop-up browsers and covert channels while accessing the Windows and internet. So up to 80% of the spam delivered by spyware infected system. Spyware is also like a software which is under the control of these attackers. Trapdoor. Trapdoor is a new jargon for backdoor programs or backdoor viruses in software field. So a trapdoor is a secret entry point into the program that allows someone that is aware of the trapdoor to gain access without going through the user security access procedures. Generally, what happens when we want to access our system, we will have some PIN. So we use that PIN to enter into our system. But the trapdoor is not like that. It is like a secret entry point. It will totally bypasses the entire access methodology followed by the user, and it will provide an access to the unauthorized programs to gain access to our system. So this is about trapdoor. Specific user identifier or password that bypasses the normal security procedures. So that's what it will bypasses the normal security procedures. So that kind of trapdoor will be included in compiler itself sometimes. So we need to be very careful and we need to detect them to avoid damages to our system. So Trojan horse, it is like a malicious software. So it will get access to our computer system, and it will try to destroy or change the contents or transfer the contents from one system to another system. So trapdoor is a secret entry point to the program. It typically works by recognizing some special sequence of input or special user ID. That means this program that will be executed when some special sequence of input is given by the user, then that trapdoor program will get executed. Some special user ID if we give, then that program will give entry point to the program or system. Next type of program threat is a logic bomb. Logic bomb is nothing but it is a program code that gets executed when some condition is satisfied. For example, it is like certain date and time, this program needs to be executed in the system. So when that particular date and time is matched, then automatically the program will get initiated and it will violate the security stack buffer overflow. It is also like a one program thread. It exploits a bug in the program. Then by using this exploitation, then it will try to modify the contents of the stack and then try to execute the programs by returning to the hacked address, by returning to the routine to the hacked address. Generally what happens in the stack, the contents of the stack is like this. When a program is having a function call to a different function, before control is passed on to the called function, the calling program will store the return address and it will save the frame pointers, automatic variables and other parameters into the stack, and then control will be passed on to the called program. Once the called program gets executed, then control will go back to the return address where the program previously halted in the calling function, and the execution commences from the line where the previous execution stopped. So this is the routine followed in the stack. This routine will be totally manipulated by this stack overflow. So what this stack overflow will do, it will smash the entire contents of the stack by replacing the return address to the some wrong location, so that when the program or function returns to the address where it wants to execute, that return address is modified and it is referring to a wrong location. So control will automatically go to the wrong location, and where this attacker's virus program or some malicious program is present, and that gets loaded and executed by the system. This is what happens in stack overflow. So one more way, a program with buffer overflow condition. Here in this C program, the buffer of size 256 is initialized, and if the number of arguments passed to this program is less than 2, it will return. If it is not less than 2, that means if it is more equal to 2, that means the contents of the argument 1 will be copied into the buffer. So what is the size of the buffer? 256 characters. But what are the arguments copied from argument 1? Suppose if the contents of the argument 1 is less than 256, there will not be any harm happens in this program. But if the content of the argument 1 is greater than 256, then what happens? It will overload the buffer. That means there will be a buffer overflow. That means the specified size of the buffer is 256, but the content copied into the buffer is greater than 256 characters. Then automatically buffer overflow condition is occurred. So what is that extra information after 256 characters? It may be something information that is intended by the attacker or malicious user. So what happens? The data could trigger a response that damages the file. So whatever data that is there after 256 characters, that might damage the system files, or changes the data, or it might unveil some private information. Condition, stack buffer overflow condition. So this is like one more type of stack overflow attack only. Here, before attack, the contents of the stack will be normal as usual. It will hold the return address and frame pointers, the contents of the local variables, etc. So whatever is intended for the original program. So after the attack, what happens? The return address is modified to some modified shell code. So when control comes to this modified code, when control comes to this return address, it will execute the modified shell code, and then some unwanted accesses may happen in the system. Thank you for watching this video.